The transport ship's hull groaned as Jin was dragged through the narrow corridors by four-armed Velkari guards. His combat medic uniform was torn and blood-stained from the battlefield where his unit had made their last stand against the alien invasion force. The red cross on his sleeve, once a symbol of protection under galactic law, now seemed meaningless in the hands of these particular captors. "Move. Human scum," hissed the lead guard, its mandibles clicking with barely contained aggression. Jin stumbled forward, his hands bound behind his back with energy shackles that sent jolts of pain through his nervous system whenever he resisted. The corridor opened into a massive arena carved from black stone, its walls stretching hundreds of meters into darkness above. Thousands of alien spectators filled the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a nightmare mosaic of scales, chitin, and writhing appendages. The air reeked of ozone and something else, something primal and dangerous that made Jin's combat instincts scream warnings. At the center of the arena lay a cage made from what appeared to be pure energy, crackling with lethal voltage. Inside, a shadow moved, something vast and predatory that made the very stones beneath Jin's feet vibrate with its breathing. "Behold, human," the arena master's voice boomed through translation circuits. "Your final opponent, the Ashrak, last of the Void Dragons, deadliest predator known to the galaxy. It has consumed the bones of 1,000 warriors from 100 worlds." Jin's mouth went dry. He had heard whispers of the Void Dragons during his medical training, ancient creatures of immense power that could manipulate gravity itself and whose scales were said to be harder than battleship armor. "Please," Jin called out, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. "I'm a medic. I'm protected under the Galactic Geneva Conventions. I heal the wounded, I don't fight." Cruel laughter erupted from the stands. The arena master's multiple eyes glittered with malice. "On this world, human, your conventions hold no power. You will face the Ashrak, and you will die for the entertainment of those whose worlds you dared to resist." The guards shoved Jin toward the cage's entrance, which dissolved at their approach like morning mist. The interior was larger than it appeared from outside, easily 50 meters across, with walls that seemed to bend space itself. The moment Jin crossed the threshold, the entrance sealed behind him with a sound like tearing reality. In the shadows at the far end of the cage, two eyes opened, each the size of a dinner plate, glowing with the cold fire of distant stars. The Ashrak emerged slowly, deliberately, its massive form revealing itself piece by terrifying piece. Its scales were deep purple-black, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it, and along its spine ran ridges that crackled with contained energy. Jin pressed his back against the energy wall, feeling the heat of it singing his hair. His medical bag had been left with him, a cruel joke perhaps, as if they expected him to treat his own wounds after the dragon finished with him. The creature was magnificent and terrible, easily 20 meters from snout to tail, with wings that could have shadowed a city block. But as Jin's trained eye took in the dragon's movements, he noticed something the bloodthirsty crowd above could not see. The Ashrak was injured, its left wing dragged slightly, and there was a deliberate care to how it placed its front left claw, dried blood black as oil, crusted along several scales near its neck. This was not a healthy apex predator ready for combat. This was a wounded animal, trapped and forced to fight for the amusement of its captors. The dragon's starfire eyes fixed on Jin, and in their depths he saw not mindless savagery, but intelligence, ancient, patient, and utterly exhausted. The crowd above roared for blood, their alien voices creating a cacophony that seemed to press down on the cage like a physical weight. Jin could feel their bloodlust, their expectation that he would run screaming from the dragon or perhaps beg pathetically for his life. Instead, he slowly lowered himself to one knee, his hands visible and empty except for his medical kit. The Ashrak's great head tilted slightly, confusion flickering across its ancient features. It had been expecting prey behavior, running, cowering, perhaps futile aggression. This strange stillness was something new. "Easy," Jin whispered, his voice carrying the same tone he'd used countless times in field hospitals when approaching wounded soldiers in shock. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon's nostrils flared, tasting his scent. Jin could feel the creature's breath, hot as a furnace and carrying the ozone smell of barely contained lightning. Those massive eyes studied him with an intelligence that made Jin's skin crawl, with the sudden understanding that this being was far older and wiser than any human. Above them, the arena master's voice boomed again. What is the human doing? Fight, coward. Give us the spectacle we came to see. The Ashrak's lips pulled back in what might have been a sneer, revealing teeth like crystalline daggers. But the expression wasn't directed at Jin. It was aimed upward, at their captors. You hate them too, Jin observed quietly. The dragon's gaze snapped back to him, and Jin saw a flicker of surprise in those stellar depths. Jin began to move slowly, deliberately telegraphing each motion. He opened his medical kit and withdrew a small scanner, a device that could read biological signs across dozens of species. The scanner beeped softly as he activated it, and the Ashrak's massive head leaned forward slightly. Curiosity overriding caution. Multiple fractures in the left wing bone structure, Jin murmured, reading the display. Severe muscle strain in the left foreleg. Plasma burns along the neck and shoulder region, approximately 3 days old. The dragon made a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a sigh. It was the sound of an apex predator that had been reduced to a circus act, forced to perform while wounded. They've been making you fight while injured, Jin said, anger creeping into his voice. Forcing you to battle while you can barely stand. The crowd's roar shifted to confused murmurs. This wasn't the savage mauling they had paid to witness. The arena master's voice crackled through the speakers, sharp with irritation. Human. You will fight the beast, or we will increase the cage's voltage until you have no choice. Jin felt the energy walls pulse with increased power, the heat becoming unbearable. But instead of driving him toward the dragon in desperation, he did something that shocked every being in the arena. He stepped closer to the Ashrak. I won't fight you, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the cage. I'm a healer. It's what I do. The dragon's eyes widened, actually widened, and for a moment the ancient creature looked almost vulnerable. It had been captured, caged, forced to kill for entertainment, and treated as nothing more than a weapon of destruction. No one had offered to heal it in longer than it could remember. Jin reached slowly into his kit again, withdrawing a field surgical laser and a biofoam dispenser. Those plasma burns need treatment or they'll become infected, and that wing needs to be properly set, or you'll never fly again. The Ashrak lowered its massive head until it was level with Jin's, studying the small human with newfound intensity. When it spoke, its voice was like distant thunder, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Jin's bones. You would heal one who could devour you in a single bite, small one? Jin met those cosmic eyes without flinching. You're hurt. That's all that matters to me. The silence that followed Jin's declaration stretched across the arena like a held breath. Even the bloodthirsty crowd seemed stunned into quiet by the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. The Ashrak's great head remained lowered, its starfire eyes locked with Jin's in a moment of understanding that transcended species barriers. Your words carry truth. Small healer, the dragon rumbled, its voice creating vibrations that Jin could feel in his chest. I am called Kale. I have not spoken my name to another in 700 of your years. Jin bowed his head respectfully. I'm Jin, combat medic, 47th Expeditionary Medical Corps. The arena master's voice cut through their exchange like a whip crack. This is intolerable. You will fight or face consequences beyond your imagination. The cage's energy walls flared to life with increased intensity, but instead of driving the unlikely pair apart, Jin and Kale moved closer together. The dragon's massive wing extended partially over Jin, providing shelter from the searing heat. They seek to force our conflict, Kale observed, his tone carrying millennia of weary wisdom. They have done this to me for many cycles, brought warriors, beasts, even other dragons to this place, all for their amusement. Jin was already working, his hand steady as he activated the surgical laser on its lowest setting. Hold still, he murmured, beginning to clean the infected plasma burns along Kale's neck. The dragon's scales were incredibly tough, but the weapons that had created these wounds had been designed to penetrate dragon hide. The crowd above erupted in confusion and anger. Alien voices shrieked demands for blood, for violence, for the spectacle they had been promised. But Jin blocked them out, focusing entirely on his patient. The wing is the primary concern, he said, running his scanner along the damaged bone structure. 3 fractures, but they're clean breaks. With proper setting and biofoam treatment, full healing is possible. Kale's great eye regarded Jin with something approaching wonder. You speak as if my recovery matters to you. It does. Jin's response was immediate and certain. Every patient matters. Every life has value. The surgical laser hummed as Jin carefully cauterized the infected tissue around the plasma burns. Kale's entire body tensed with pain, but he remained perfectly still, understanding instinctively that movement could injure the small human working so close to his vital areas. "Your people must be proud to have such healers among them," Kale said through gritted fangs. Jin's hands paused for just a moment. "My people are mostly dead. This was supposed to be a peaceful medical mission, establishing field hospitals on Kepler 442c. The Velkari changed that when they invaded. Above them, the arena master was consulting frantically with other officials. Their voices carried down to the cage in agitated bursts of untranslated alien speech. Whatever they were discussing, it was clear that this turn of events had not been part of their plans. "The small burns are clean now," Jin announced, applying biofoam that would accelerate cellular regeneration. "The wing is going to be more complex. I'll need you to extend it fully so I can access the fracture points." Kale's wing unfurled slowly, revealing the elegant membrane stretched between bones as thick as tree trunks. The damage was extensive, clearly the result of a sustained attack by multiple energy weapons. "They captured me during the siege of Arcturus Station," Kale explained as Jin worked. "I was defending a colony of peaceful herbivores when their fleet arrived. I managed to destroy 17 of their ships before they brought me down." Jin looked up from his work, respect clear in his eyes. 17 ships? You were fighting alone?" "I am the last," Kale said simply. "My kind are gone. I fight now only because I have nothing left to lose." The surgical laser was working on the first fracture, carefully realigning bone fragments while biofoam held them in place. It was delicate work. One wrong move could permanently cripple the dragon's ability to fly. "You're not alone anymore," Jin said quietly. "And you're going to heal. I promise you that." For the first time in centuries, Kale felt something he had thought lost forever: hope. 3 hours into the healing process, Jin's hands moved with a precision that seemed to transcend normal human capability. The surgical laser never wavered. The biofoam applications were perfectly measured, and his diagnostic scanner revealed bone alignments that were not just adequate, they were flawless. Kale watched in fascination as the small human worked. In his long life, the dragon had witnessed the medical practices of dozens of species, from the crystalline healers of Vega Prime to the biomanipulators of the hive worlds. But he had never seen anything quite like this. "Your technique," Kale rumbled quietly, careful not to disturb Jin's concentration. "It is not entirely human, is it?" Jin's hands paused for just a fraction of a second, so briefly that only a creature of Kale's ancient perceptions would have noticed. "I don't know what you mean," he replied, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Your scanner reads biological structures across species barriers that should be impossible for human technology to penetrate. Your precision with the surgical tool suggests knowledge of dragon anatomy that no human should possess. And your biofoam..." Kale's great eye focused on the regenerative compound Jin was applying. "It is adapting itself to my physiology in real time. Standard biofoam cannot do this." Jin continued working, but Kale could sense his growing unease. "I've always been good with medicine. My instructor said I had natural talent." "Natural talent," Kale repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, I suppose that is one way to describe it." Above them, the arena master's patience had reached its end. The crowd was growing restless, their bloodlust unsatisfied by the peaceful scene below. Emergency containment units were being wheeled into position around the cage, massive energy projectors designed to force compliance through overwhelming pain. "They prepare to intervene," Kale warned. "My healing matters less to them than their entertainment." Jin looked up at the gathering forces above, his jaw set with determination. "Then we need to finish this quickly." He positioned himself at the final fracture point, the most complex break near where Kale's wing joined his massive shoulder. The surgical laser powered up to full intensity, but as Jin began the delicate work, something extraordinary happened. The tool seemed to respond to more than just his conscious control. It moved with an intuitive understanding of Kale's anatomy that went beyond medical training. "Impossible," Kale breathed. "You are healing the bone matrix at the cellular level. The fracture is not just mending, it is becoming stronger than it was before." Jin's eyes widened as he watched his own hands work. The laser was somehow attuning itself to frequencies that promoted not just healing, but enhancement. The biofoam was restructuring itself into patterns that seemed to defy its original programming. "I don't understand," Jin whispered. I can't do this." "Yet you are doing it," Kyle observed. "The question is, what are you, Jin of the 47th Medical Corps?" Before Jin could respond, the arena master's voice boomed across the cage. "Enough! You have made a mockery of our traditions long enough." The emergency containment units powered up with a sound like tearing space. Energy beams lanced down into the cage, designed to cause paralysis and agony in any living creature they touched. But as the beams struck Jin, something impossible occurred. The energy didn't harm him. It was absorbed. Jin straightened slowly, bioelectrical energy crackling around his hands like controlled lightning. His eyes had taken on a faint luminescence, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated with the very structure of the cage itself. "The healing is complete," he announced, and his words seemed to carry weight that pressed against reality itself. Kale flexed his wing experimentally, and for the first time in months there was no pain. More than that, the wing felt stronger than it had been even before his capture. His other injuries had healed completely, leaving not even scars behind. "What are you?" Kale asked again, but now there was awe in his voice rather than mere curiosity. Jin looked at his hands, watching energy dance between his fingers like tame lightning. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm beginning to remember." The arena erupted into chaos as the full implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in. Alien voices shrieked in a dozen languages, but beneath the cacophony, one word was repeated again and again in the ancient galactic tongue: "Healer King." The arena master's multiple eyes were wide with terror as he barked orders into his communication device. "Lock down the entire facility. Contact the High Command immediately. We have a Healer King in the cage." Jin looked up at the panic spreading through the stands, confusion clear on his face. "Healer King? What are they talking about?" Kale's massive head lowered until he was eye level with Jin, and in the dragon's ancient gaze there was recognition, and perhaps a hint of fear. "You truly do not know, do you? They have hidden your nature even from yourself." The energy containment units around the cage began powering up to maximum output, their humming growing to a painful whine. But as the first wave of suppression energy lanced down toward them, Jin raised his hand instinctively and the energy simply stopped, hanging in the air like frozen lightning. "The Healer Kings were legend," Kale explained, his voice urgent as more security forces poured into the arena. Beings of immense power who could not only heal any wound, cure any disease, but could manipulate the very fabric of life itself. They were said to be the universe's answer to the chaos of war and suffering. Jin stared at the suspended energy beams, watching them slowly dissolve under his unconscious influence. "That's impossible. I'm just a medic. I heal people because it is your nature," Kale finished. "Because you cannot stand to see suffering even in your enemies. Because every life, no matter how alien or hostile, has value to you." Around them, the cage's energy walls were beginning to fluctuate as Jin's presence interfered with their containment matrices. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the facility as systems designed to hold the most dangerous beings in the galaxy began to fail. "We need to get you out of here," Kyle said, his voice taking on an edge of protective fury. "If they realize what you truly are, they will not try to capture you. They will try to destroy you. A Healer King could undo everything they have built." Jin looked at his hands again, watching energy patterns flow beneath his skin like bioluminescent rivers. Memories were stirring, not of his childhood or his medical training, but of something deeper. Images of worlds healed from the scars of war, of species brought back from the edge of extinction, of peace spreading across the galaxy like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. "I remember," he whispered. "Not all of it, but fragments. I was placed among the humans for protection. My people, the Zephyrins, they were hunted to near extinction because the warring species feared what we could do." The cage walls were now fluctuating wildly, their energy patterns becoming unstable as Jin's awakening abilities interfered with their function. Through the transparent energy, they could see massive war machines being wheeled into position, weapons designed to crack planetoids being aimed at their containment. "They will try to kill us both," Kale observed. "To them, A healer king and the last void dragon united would represent an existential threat to their way of life. Jin looked at his unlikely ally, a creature of immense power who had been reduced to a gladiatorial victim, just as Jin had been reduced to a simple human medic. The parallel was not lost on either of them. "I won't let them hurt you," Jin said, and his voice carried harmonics that made the very stones of the arena resonate. "You saved yourself by showing mercy to me. Now I'll return the favor." The first planetary bombardment cannon fired, its beam capable of boring through a moon's core. But as the energy struck the cage, it simply scattered. Jin stood at the center of a growing sphere of influence, where the laws of physics seemed to bend to accommodate compassion rather than destruction. Kale spread his now-healed wings to their full magnificent span, energy crackling along his scales as his own power awakened in response to Jin's presence. "Then let us show them what happens when they cage those who should be free." The Arena Master's final transmission before the communication arrays failed was brief, but carried the weight of prophecy. "The Healer King has awakened. May the gods forgive us all." The transformation began with light, not the harsh glare of the arena's fixtures, but a soft golden radiance that emanated from Jin's very being. As his true nature fully awakened, the simple combat medic uniform he wore began to shimmer and change, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to shift between dimensions. "I remember now," Jin said, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic understanding. "I am Ryo Jin, last of the Zephyrin Healer Kings. My people sent me to live among the humans when the Galactic Consortium began their purge. They believed that if I grew up thinking I was human, I could learn to value all life equally, not just that of my own species." Kyle watched in awe as Ryo Jin's true form began to manifest. His human appearance remained, but now it was enhanced with an otherworldly grace. His hands glowed with healing energy that pulsed in rhythm with every heartbeat in the arena, and his eyes held depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of 1,000 worlds. The cage that had held them prisoner for hours simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, it was as if the concept of confinement itself became incompatible with Ryo Jin's presence. The energy that had formed the walls dissolved harmlessly, returning to the generators as pure, clean power. Throughout the arena, something unprecedented was happening. Alien spectators who had come to witness death and suffering found their old wounds healing, their diseases curing themselves, their mental anguish lifting like morning fog. Even the Velkari guards, bred for cruelty and violence, felt foreign emotions stirring in their hearts: compassion, empathy, the desire to protect rather than destroy. This is what they feared, Ryo Jin explained as his power continued to radiate outward. Not just the ability to heal, but the ability to change the fundamental nature of conflict itself. When beings truly understand the value of life, war becomes impossible. The Arena Master stumbled down from his viewing platform, his multiple eyes streaming with tears he didn't understand. The hatred and bloodlust that had driven him for decades was simply gone. In its place was a desperate need to atone for the suffering he had caused. "Forgive me," the alien sobbed, falling to his knees before Ryo Jin. "I have overseen the deaths of thousands for entertainment. I have tortured and killed and felt joy in their pain. What have I become?" Ryo Jin knelt beside the broken creature, placing a gentle hand on his scaled head. "You became what your society demanded, but that can change. All of it can change." Kyle spread his massive wings, testing their renewed strength. The healing Ryo Jin had performed had done more than repair damage. It had restored him to the prime of his draconic power. But more importantly, it had restored his hope. "The other facilities," Kale rumbled. "There are 17 more arena worlds in this sector alone. Thousands of beings held captive, forced to fight and die for others' amusement." Ryo Jin stood, his aura of healing energy now extending throughout the entire complex. Guards were laying down their weapons, gladiators were embracing their former enemies, and the very architecture of the place was beginning to transform as its purpose shifted from cruelty to compassion. "Then we'll visit them all," Ryo Jin declared. "Every prison, every arena, every place where suffering is manufactured for profit or pleasure." The transformation was spreading beyond the arena now, carried on waves of energy that Ryo Jin couldn't contain even if he wanted to. Across the planet, Conflicts were ending as combatants found themselves unable to remember why they had been fighting. Weapons designed for killing were spontaneously converting themselves into tools for building and healing. High above them, the Velkari fleet that had been preparing to bombard the arena found their weapon systems failing, not damaged, simply refusing to function. The concept of mass destruction had become antithetical to the space they occupied. Your people were wise to hide you among the humans, Kale observed, living as they do, constantly struggling and fighting to survive, yet never losing their capacity for kindness. It taught you to value life in all its forms. Ryojin nodded, understanding flooding through him. The humans' greatest strength isn't their technology or their tenacity. It's their ability to find hope in hopeless situations. They taught me that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. Sometimes it's about helping others find the strength to fix themselves. The arena master looked up at them with eyes now clear of the madness that had consumed him. What do we do now? How do we live with what we've done? You rebuild, Ryojin said simply. You take these arenas and turn them into hospitals. You take these weapons and turn them into tools for construction. You take the energy you've spent on destruction and redirect it toward creation. Around them, the impossible was becoming reality, as the fundamental nature of an entire world shifted toward peace. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. What had once been the most notorious, gladiatorial world in the Outer Rim had become something unprecedented, a sanctuary, where former enemies worked side by side to heal the scars left by generations of conflict. Ryojin stood atop the highest tower of what had once been the arena complex, now converted into a vast medical facility that treated beings from across the galaxy. His human appearance had stabilized into something that bridged both his true nature and his adopted heritage, a living symbol of how different species could merge their strengths. Kale landed beside him with the silent grace that only a master of the void could achieve. The dragon's scales now shimmered with renewed vitality, and his eyes held the contentment of a being who had found his purpose again. The representatives from the Galactic Council have arrived, Kale reported. They're requesting an audience. Ryojin smiled, the expression carrying the warmth that had become his signature throughout the known galaxy. Let me guess. They want to know how to control what's happening here, how to weaponize it. Some do, Kyle acknowledged, but others are beginning to understand. The peace is spreading faster than they can monitor it. Entire star systems are laying down arms. Trade routes that have been closed for centuries due to warfare are reopening. Below them, the medical facility bustled with activity. Former Velkari soldiers worked alongside human refugees to tend to patients from dozens of species. The arena master, now called Director Thal, had become one of the most effective administrators in the facility's history, his intimate knowledge of suffering making him exceptionally capable of preventing it. They'll try to stop us eventually, Ryojin mused. There are too many beings whose power depends on maintaining conflict. Kale's rumble carried a hint of dark amusement. Let them try. Word has reached the other survivors. Dragons, phoenixes, even some of the Titan-class beings thought extinct. Your awakening has reminded them what they were meant to protect. From the facility below, a young human child emerged, one of the refugees from Kepler 442c who had been brought here for treatment. She looked up at Ryojin with eyes that held no fear, only curiosity. Dr. Jin, she called up, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. When will you teach me to heal like you do? Ryojin's smile widened. Since his awakening, he had discovered that his abilities could be shared, not the full power of a healer king, but enough to let others touch the same compassion that drove him. The child, like many others, had shown remarkable aptitude. Tomorrow, so young, he called back. But remember, the greatest healing happens here first. He touched his chest, over his heart. The girl nodded solemnly and ran back inside, already eager to continue her studies. The humans adapt remarkably quickly, Kyle observed. They accept the impossible as if it were merely improbable. That's what makes them perfect teachers, Ryojin replied. They taught me that heroism isn't about having power. It's about choosing to use whatever power you have to help others, regardless of the cost to yourself. A communication chime sounded from the facility below. Director Thal's voice carried up to them through the intercom system. Healer King, We have incoming refugee ships from the Andromeda conflict. 17,000 wounded, multiple species, some with injuries we've never seen before. Ryojin and Kale exchanged glances. The Andromeda conflict was a war so brutal and widespread that most of the galaxy had written off that entire spiral arm as lost. Prepare the emergency bays, Ryojin responded, and activate the teaching protocols. It's time for the next group of students to learn what healing really means. As they prepared to descend into the facility, Kale paused. Do you ever regret it? Giving up the quiet life of a human medic for this? Ryojin looked out across the vista, where former battlefields had become gardens, where species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together to preserve life. In the distance, construction ships were building new healing centers on other worlds, carrying the model they had created here to every corner of the galaxy. Every being deserves the chance to be more than their worst moments, he said finally. The humans taught me that. The dragon who could have killed me but chose compassion taught me that. Even our former captors, when given the chance to choose differently, taught me that. He turned toward the entrance to the facility, where thousands of beings waited for healing, not just of their bodies, but of their spirits and their societies. I was thrown into a cage with the deadliest predator in the galaxy, Ryojin reflected, but what I found there wasn't a monster. I found a kindred spirit, a teacher, and the key to understanding my true purpose. Kale's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. And I found that sometimes the most powerful weapon against despair is a simple human medic who refuses to let anyone suffer alone. Together, they descended into the facility, ready to heal whatever wounds the galaxy brought to their door. Behind them, stars that had been dark with conflict for centuries began to shine with the light of hope once more.